Now, let's get to some football. First, let's just deal with some Panthers stuff. When the Panthers bring in Dowdell, the running back from Dallas, they sign him to the 1-year deal, and they pair him with Chuba Hubbard. I know it's maybe hard to look at it now, but that's got to put them among easily the top 10 running back duos in the league. It might be higher than that.
Yeah, that's probably about right. And, I mean, I think obviously you don't have, a Saquon Barkley or anything like that, but not that you need to. I don't think, the Panthers are one of those teams that needs to pay for a running back. But the combo of Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard is a really nice, underrated combination, I think. And it also allows you to sort of sit on the back burner with Jonathan Brooks. There's no reason to rush him back.
Right.
Unless you come out of the gates firing on offense. You're a lot better than people expect, and you win a bunch of games early. Even then, you have to think about the long-term health for him. And so I think, this is a team that wants to run behind an improved offensive line. That was, one of the biggest jumps from 2024 from 2 years ago to last year was, the Panthers' offensive line play, and that's a big deal if you're going to be a team that's trying to protect Bryce Young, that's
right.
trying to have that offense that Canales wants. And so I like the signing of Rico Dowdle. I think didn't Miles Sanders go to Dallas? And it's like, what kind of swap? What kind of swap is that for Dallas?
I have great respect for Miles Sanders. He came back and played the last game, played hard. He wanted to be here, but I get why they moved on. Probably got a better player for less money, right? If you think about it.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
The Panthers have two 1,300-yard from scrimmage running backs in the same backfield. It'll give them some versatility. I thought one of the things that Hubbard did so well last year was catch the ball out of the backfield. I don't think people expected him to be as good catching the ball out of the backfield. So everything else that they've done, they beefed up the defensive line. They added some talent on the edges, a little bit anyway, or at least an outside linebacker. Safety they addressed. I mean, still need to go heavy on the defensive side of the ball in the draft, and I still think they could use another wide receiver. But what are your thoughts overall on what they have done so far?
Yeah, I thought beefing up the back end of the defense was a really smart idea, especially with the notion, I think, generally that the Panthers will look towards the defensive line. Maybe even the interior of the defensive line. We'll see. But more pass rusher when they pick. But I think when I look at this Panthers offseason, coupled with last year's offseason, you sort of see. To me, it starts to sort of profile as okay. David Tepper is staying hands off and allowing the football people to do football stuff and building a roster in a methodical and sort of precise way around an identity. And around a young quarterback who, after a disastrous first season, may very well be sort of coming into his own, and we'll see what happens next year. But I think it's one of those where that offseason where they got Bryce was just so disastrous, and now it's like, okay, this is how you build a roster. So you go out and get sending younger players in free agency that can help beef up your defense. But also, make sure to remember that you win through the draft and that you just can't. They're not trying to make everything happen in one fell swoop, which I think is really important.
Well, Brinson joining us here on the Adam Gold Show, senior NFL writer, CBSSports.com. Let me just throw a couple of other things. Big picture question about the Panthers, and then we'll move on to some other things around the league. Is it realistic? Now, I'm not talking about optimistic. Is it realistic that they are legit contenders to win the NFC South?
I would say yes, because I think there's just a lot of uncertainty in the division, right? You have Tampa, and they've been very consistent in winning the division, but haven't been this dominant team that's just going to, destroy people like the Bills or, somebody like that. Atlanta, they're going to be going with Michael Penix, and I think there's a little bit of unknown there. As good as he looked, they've got to improve that defense. And then New Orleans is a total crapshoot. So I think they really are. I just think it's like, I don't think it would be, if you told me that the Panthers won the division, I wouldn't be in 2025. I wouldn't be entirely shocked. I don't think that they should be favored to win the division. I think they're probably at best the third best team in the NFC South. But weird things happen. Like Bryce Young takes some kind of like medium step forward, or even like a medium large step forward, and all of a sudden maybe you have a roster. If you pick up a pass rusher, everybody stays healthy. Well, yeah, they can win the division. But I think it's that should always be the goal. I think for this team, it's like show that you're a 500-ish team that can then take one more step the following year.
Will Brinson is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. I agree. I think, I love Michael Penix. I think Atlanta will be fine offensively. I'm not sure if their defense will be good enough. And I guess they're still waiting for Kyle Pitts to click. I mean, I thought he was one of those guys that couldn't miss, but we have been waiting for the can't miss Kyle Pitts for a while. All right, let me get to a couple of other things. We'll start with Aaron Rodgers. Doesn't look like Minnesota's interested, that it's going to be the J.J. McCarthy era starting, even though he has not played because of injury. And Sam Darnold was so good last year until they really needed him to be good, in which case he walked past the mirror and became Sam Darnold again. Seattle will maybe at times find that to be the case, maybe not. Maybe he'll be cured. But Minnesota doesn't appear to be interested in Aaron Rodgers, which means it's Pittsburgh or the Giants, unless there's a mystery team somewhere out there. Where does he fit best? Does he fit best anywhere? And if it's not the Steelers or the Giants that get Aaron Rodgers, what are their fallbacks?
Yeah, it's one of those where it's crazy because Rodgers has hijacked the off seasons in years past with like his decision making.
Right.
And this year everyone's like, nah, we're just going to go ahead. We got to go ahead and do what we got to do. Right. I think he makes a ton of sense in Pittsburgh, and I know we sort of disagree on this because Aaron Rodgers, as we know him, doesn't seem like somebody who would be simpatico with Mike Tomlin.
Right.
But I think there's a real interest from Rodgers' side if he plays in 2025, and I think he wants to because I don't think he wants to go out like he did in 2024. But if he plays, to show everybody that he is still a very good football player, or at least somebody who can operate when the circumstances around him are reasonably competent, and that's what you have in Pittsburgh, which you didn't have in New York with the Jets. And
right.
So it could make some sense for the Giants. It just feels like the Giants roster, even though they have some nice pieces on offense, a couple of guys on the offensive line. Obviously, Malik Neighbors is a superstar, and then they have a defensive line that was really, really good when healthy. I just feel like, to me, it makes a little more sense for him to go to Pittsburgh and operate this offense that just asks him to be under center, to hand off a bunch, to play action, to pick George Pickens, DK Metcalf down the field when you get those looks, and to sort of be that veteran guy that they wanted Russell Wilson to be, but ultimately Russ ended up not being. So I like the Pittsburgh fit. I think it's the best fit. I think he'll be motivated to come back and show people he's not washed. And if he does, that thing could click pretty nicely with him and Tomlin and that Pittsburgh offense and that Pittsburgh defense, maybe more importantly.
Then what's taking so long? I mean, if I was choosing between the stability of the Steelers and the Giants, who are basically Jets light, why wouldn't he already have selected Pittsburgh?
I think he might legitimately be deciding if he wants to play or not, which is absolutely fine, right? I mean, if he's deciding, do I want to, because if you're Rodgers, I mean, you're tired. This is the time of year where guys who are at the end of their run,
right,
typically want to step back and take some legitimate time, right? Where you want to make sure that you're all in on that, because if you're not, it's going to go really, really poorly. And my best guess would be that he's smoking ayahuasca or whatever, and trying to decide if he wants to play and if he's all in on trying to play in 2025. Because if he's not, you definitely don't want to try. You definitely don't want to commit too early.
Do you smoke ayahuasca, or do you? I thought you drank it. I don't really know. I've never done anything with it. I was under the impression you drink it, but hey, I could be wrong.
I don't know.
Obviously, you don't either.
Yeah, clearly, yeah. See, I'm just trying to keep my good name clear. It's called a red herring, Gold. Like I'm trying to
Oh, I see.
throw you off the scent here.
Yeah, it's like when Mark McGuire put that whatever that non-steroid thing was in his locker, like androstenedione. He had that in his locker to kind of distract people from the fact that he was using anabolic steroids. I get it. That's a very smart move on your part. Will Brinson, senior NFL writer, CBSSports.com, joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. Look, if I were the Steelers, I wouldn't do it because I watched him enough last year because the Jets seem to be on national TV all the time, and he was terrible.
Sure.
Well, I shouldn't say he was terrible. He had moments. He had moments where he was really good. But Rodgers, especially at end of games, just wasn't very good. Even with opportunities when the plays were there to be made, he underthrew a lot of balls. Then he threw one ball poorly and blamed Mike Williams for it, which that was a bad look on Rodgers' part. It was a bad look. Devontae Adams wasn't great coming back to the Jets. You know, there were some moments, but I just think Rodgers is legit washed. And the other question I have is, does he have an Egyptian vacation planned for the second or third week of training camp, in which case that Rodgers just might not sign until the middle of August?
Well, yeah, that's where you would. I mean, you know, maybe that's what's taking so long. Is he said, "Let me go to my Egyptian vacation now before let me get all my vacations out of the way now before I sign. That way, after I sign, because I mean, I do think." You know, we joked about it a couple of weeks ago or whatever, but, you know, I do think on the Mike Tomlin front, something like that, and you saw it from Aaron Glenn, right? You know, when Rodgers went and met with the Jets, it was like, look, you know, and not that they said, if you do Pat McAfee show, you can't play for us. But
right.
I think the new regime in New York said, you know, if you're going to be in, we want you to be all in. You know, no vacation. Like, you were not good enough last year to warrant –
correct.
Being able to say, I'm going on vacation and skipping training camp. Like, and so I think there might be a little of that, too, with the Steelers where, you know, Mike Tomlin is not going to change the culture of what he has in Pittsburgh in order to accommodate Aaron Rodgers.
Cam Hayward will not let that happen. I believe comments I have read from Cam Hayward where he said, "Hey man, I'm not gonna recruit you. You either want to play here or you don't, and if you don't, that's fine." And he was part of the recruiting process for Russell Wilson last year. Could Wilson end up back in Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
right.
plausible. I mean, I think Russ is washed too.
I agree. I think he is. I don't think there's any question.
Yeah. So certainly plausible.
Okay.
You know, but that thing went south down the stretch.
Yeah, it did. Their offense was terrible down the stretch.
I don't know. I just don't know why they would. I don't know why they would want to run that back.
I'm with you, but there aren't a lot of great options for the Steelers right now.
They're not. Yeah. No, I mean, I know it's not. I mean, that's why, you know, to me, it's like, would Pittsburgh be this inactive at that position if they weren't confident that Rodgers was going to come back and play?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
honestly, if I were the Steelers, and I'm not a huge fan, I would see what the Falcons wanted for Kirk Cousins at this point. All right, let me get two more things I want to get. You already mentioned the Jets and Aaron Glenn. Justin Fields is now probably, I guess, he's the presumptive quarterback to start the season. But Glenn,
what they paid him.
Yeah, I mean, but I think they're probably going to end up drafting a quarterback too, as dumb as that organization is. Is Aaron Glenn and this gritty, very much a Dan Campbell-like attitude, which, you know, if you're a Jets fan, fine, that's great. I don't know if their roster's any good. Do you like the way they're presenting themselves right now?
Yeah, I do. I think when you have a team like the Jets that has just especially come out of this 2 years of turning the franchise over to Aaron Rodgers and letting him, you know, again, do whatever he wanted, bring in whoever he wanted. I'm going to Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, you know, just kowtowing to Rodgers in the way that they did. I think you want to change the mentality of what's going on there. And you know, Aaron Glenn saw what Dan Campbell did, which is take a perennial loser in the Detroit Lions and turn them into one of the annual Super Bowl favorites. And so, it only works if everybody buys in and if you get the players. And so, like, that's part of the process too. Like, you can have this is our mentality, this is our approach, this is how we do things around here stance. It's great if you start winning football games. Remember, Dave Campbell very nearly got fired in his first two and a half years.
They were 1-6 in year two.
Yeah, they just weren't winning any football games, and suddenly things clicked. And so I think that's part of it too, right? Do you have organizational buy-in?
Right.
Is there going to be organizational patience? Are the football guys going to get to do football things and not rely on Madden ratings? Like, all those things matter for the Jets. And so, yeah, I like it. I always like that sort of approach. But, I mean, it's up in the air whether it's going to definitively work.
All right, final question for Will Brinson. Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, all long-term contracts. That's 33% of the Cincinnati Bengals salary cap. Actually, it might be a shade more than 33%. They're trying to sign Trey Hendrickson, their defensive end. That contract ain't going to be cheap. It should be in the cap hit range of Chase and Higgins, somewhere in the low to mid 20s at least, which would take them to about 42% of their overall salary cap for 4 guys. Are they serious about winning?
Yeah, I think they are. Look, I mean, Burrow wanted his guys back. I mean, again, I said this several times to you. I think it's like you could have gotten Chase done for cheaper, and you could have gotten T. Higgins done for cheaper before if you had acted, more aggressively, beaten the market to those contracts, gotten them paid, and figure things out early, like ahead of time, rather than after like the last possible minute. So that I don't like about it, but I do think when that team is the best, and granted, now they did it last year, they didn't make the playoffs because the defense is so bad. But like when that team's at its best, it's when Burrow has the weapons. Now you got to figure out how he's going to be protected with that offensive line. You're going to have to hit on some draft picks. You're going to have to hit on some cheap free agent signings, and you're going to have to realize that the way you're building your roster is a little stars and scrubby, just because of the top-heavy nature of those salary cap hits. But I do think, if you're going to pay people, pay your 4 best players. And those 4 guys are their 4 best players. So, I mean, I'm all for the talent retention part of it. I just think if you've got these great players and everybody in the league knew they were great, get ahead of the curve so you can stagger those cap hits and figure things out financially that allows you to go out and be a contender and to add more pieces, in free agency that they can build around and supplement the main guys that you got.
You're preaching to the choir about that. I keep talking about that, but here's where I will differ. I don't think the Bengals are serious about winning. They might be able to outscore teams. They're not going to be able to build. They're not going to be able to spend enough money unless they crush draft after draft after draft. They're not going to win. They're going to score, but they're not going to win.
And
just not going to happen.
The Bengals have had this sort of approach in the past, though, where it's they believe they can scout and produce better, but you're right. You have to nail those drafts. Otherwise, what you end up becoming is the Saints from 2014, 15, and 16, where they had Drew Brees setting records every year. They had great weapons, and they went 7-9 every season until they nailed that draft in 2017 that brought them a bunch of star players and got them back into that Super Bowl hunt.
Will Brinson, senior NFL writer, CBSSports.com. Who's your Final 4?
I got Houston. It's pretty chalky, I think.
Yeah.
Houston, Duke, Florida, and
Auburn?
St. John's?
Okay, maybe. St. John's.
Yeah, Houston over St. Yeah. Calvin Sampson over Rick Pitino in the.
Oh, I know. If it's Houston St. John's, there's no chance I'm watching that game. That game will make me.
I'd love it. I'd love to watch that game.
You hate offense. That's what you do.
Right. But that's the ultimate. Thank God it's
not watching that game.
Sorry.
Because
they'd be mad about it.
I'm not watching that game. Will Brinson, senior NFL writer, CBSSports.com. My friend, I'll talk to you soon.
Bye, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Peace.